to Casually Criterion. My name is Mike.
And my name's Justin. And this is a off-week episode where we take a week off from our journey through the Criterion collection and talk about what's on our mind. In regards to film, of course, not just in general.
That's true. And of course, Chris is absent again this week. He is still working on a play, but he will be back with us soon. We do promise.
That play better be good.
Yeah.
If he's missing this much time.
Yeah, he invited us both to go see it, so.
Yeah, maybe we'll do an episode reviewing his play and not tell him. Yeah. Well, if you want to follow along with the podcast, keep in touch, let us know your thoughts on stuff we talk about. Let us know if you want us to talk about anything in particular. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/casuallycriterion podcast. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at casualcriterion. Or if you want to email us directly, you can do that at casuallycriterion@gmail.com. And don't forget to check us out on iTunes. Give us a rating and a review. It really helps grow the show, which will make the show better, I think.
Absolutely. All the feedback you can throw at us, we would appreciate. Today's episode, we are talking about 3 of the Best Picture nominations. We've already talked about 3 billboards outside of Ebbing, Missouri on our last off-week episode. But this week, we are actually going to go through and cover the first part of the Best Picture nominees. We've got Call Me By Your Name, The Shape of Water, and Dunkirk. So none of these will be full-on reviews, but we are going to get to talk about each one of the Best Picture nominees, hopefully by the time Oscars rolls around. And we'll have some fun conversation.
Yeah, I think it's our goal is to get at least a short review out for like every Best Picture film, and we're going to do all these spoiler-free. I think that's worth noting.
Or as spoiler-free as we can.
Yeah, we're going to try to be spoiler-free, and if we're unsuccessful with that, we'll probably just cut it out. So, yeah.
All right.
Cool. And before we get into the movies, we're going to talk about what's on our mind in regards to film and movie news. And the big news this week is, of course, the Oscar nominations. So we're going to kind of go over those, talk about our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions about them.
Yeah, and everything in between.
We'll start with cinematography. We're not going to go through every single category because there's a lot of them that, we either haven't seen or don't know much about, or it's kind of difficult to talk about, like best editing or best special effects.
Right. Yeah, some things are more fun to listen to than others, we assume. So
yeah,
we'll try to talk about the cool ones.
Yeah, so we'll start with cinematography. And Mike, I guess, I don't know, do you want to list them off or just kind of, or should we just kind of talk about the ones that are interesting to us?
I think maybe just talk about the ones that are interesting.
Yeah, fair enough. So I think the most interesting one for me in the cinematography is Rachel Morrison, nominated for Mudbound. And it's interesting because she's the first woman to ever be nominated for cinematography award.
Which is crazy.
Or at least within the Oscars.
To think about. Yeah, which is insane. But, yeah, I guess it's about time. I haven't seen this movie, so I don't know if it's deserving of said nomination, but I'm glad that it's happened.
Yeah, I'm actually, I think I ran across it. I think it might be on Netflix.
It is.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah. I actually was watching a trailer for it, I think, probably a few days before these nominations came out. So, I don't know, it looked good, and I'm definitely going to watch it before Oscar time, so I can know about that one.
Yeah, certainly. In fact, the only one of these movies I haven't seen is actually Darkest Hour. I've seen Blade Runner, I've seen Dunkirk, and I've seen The Shape of Water.
Yeah, I haven't seen Darkest Hour. Yeah, I haven't seen Darkest Hour, and obviously not Mudbound. I mean, Darkest Hour seems like it looks pretty good.
Sure.
I suppose, but I guess out of the ones I've seen, I would probably go for Dunkirk.
Yeah,
I really like the way that movie looks.
Definitely.
We'll talk about it later. I think everyone's kind of on the Deakins bandwagon because he's been nominated so many times and never won.
Sure.
But I don't think Blade Runner 2049 is his best work. It's certainly a good-looking movie, but for me, it would feel a little bit like they finally give him the Oscar for, or just like the pity Oscar, I guess.
Right. It would feel like the Martin Scorsese win for Departed.
Yeah, or like Leonardo DiCaprio. What did he win for? Was it The Revenant?
Yeah, The Revenant.
Okay, which I assume he's good in, but I know that there's just other times that he's deserved that.
Yeah, I would go so far as to say he probably deserved that Oscar, but he's also deserved Oscars other times, I think, as well, or at least nominations.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I have to say, I think I agree with you on Dunkirk looking fantastic and probably technically being the best. But man, since Blade Runner didn't get nominated for anything else significant, I would like a win for Blade Runner in this category because, man, that movie was beautiful. Like, they made CG look like they were filming miniatures, and I don't know, everything about it just looked great, I thought.
Yeah, it's certainly a good-looking movie.
The next category I see here is Best Original Screenplay. In this, we have The Big Sick, Get Out, Lady Bird, The Shape of Water, and 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri. I've actually seen all of these movies. Which ones have you seen?
I've seen all but The Big Sick.
Really?
Which I hear is very good.
Yeah, that's actually might be my favorite one in this category. In fact, looking at the list now, it definitely is my favorite script out of this category.
Very cool. Out of the ones I've seen, I would probably choose Get Out. I think it's like the most like original idea, or like the most interesting idea.
Yeah, I would say interesting idea. I don't know if it's original in its social commentary maybe, but not original in its horror movie plot points, I don't think. But that's for another time.
For sure.
But yeah, no, these are all actually, this is a really strong list of nominees.
Yeah. I think if you listen to last off week episode, I don't think I was too kind towards 3 Billboards as a movie, but I think we did make the comment that the script seems better than the movie turned out in some ways. So
no, yeah, we definitely said that was the consensus, I guess, between the two of us. I think I liked it a little better than you, but I think we both agree that it is a better script than was a movie executed.
Yes. Cool. Well, we'll move on to adapted screenplay, or best adapted screenplay, I guess. And so we have Call Me By Your Name, The Disaster Artist, Logan, Molly's Game, and Mudbound, of which I have only seen 2 of these, which is Call Me By Your Name and The Disaster Artist.
I've seen all of them but Mudbound. I would say probably my favorite script would be Molly's Game for sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Molly's Game was actually really good. Jessica Chastain was good in it. That was Aaron Sorkin's first directorial debut. It was really good.
Yeah, I saw the trailer for it, and it didn't get me very excited to see it. Like I don't know, it just didn't do much for me. So
no, I wasn't excited to see it either. But then again, I don't know if I saw a trailer. I just knew of it, and I'd been hearing about Molly's Game all year, and I wanted to see it because supposedly it was the best Idris Elba performance all year because he was in 3 movies, and this was supposedly the one where he got to shine. Because I think the last one was like Darkest Tower, which
Dark Tower.
Oh yeah, Darkest Tower.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Dark Tower.
Yeah. Cool.
That's
yeah. Out of the 2 I've seen, I think Call Me By Your Name is the superior to The Disaster Artist.
I would agree with that for sure.
But I don't know. I feel like that's a pretty uninformed opinion. So take it. don't take it for anything.
Yeah,
it's worth nothing.
So the next category I wanted to talk about was animated feature, the best animated feature, of which I'm going to be honest, I've only seen 1. We got Boss Baby, The Breadwinner, Coco, Ferdinand, and Loving Vincent.
Yes.
Loving
Vincent is the one. That's the one that they did by like paintings, actual paintings, right?
Right. I think it's actually a couple years old, isn't it? I've been hearing about this movie for a long time, I feel.
Yeah, I feel like they've been working on it for a while. I know I saw like a short clip of it. It might have been a trailer, I guess, a while back, but maybe it's just taken them this long to like complete it.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that movie, actually. It sounds really interesting. But of the movies I have seen, which is only Coco, it's really good.
Yeah, having not seen anything else, I just watched Coco like 2 days ago, or yesterday, actually.
Nice.
And yeah, if it wins, I would say I wouldn't feel like it doesn't deserve it. Like there may be a better movie in here, but I feel like Coco is definitely going to be, definitely like worthy of winning.
Yeah, it's worthy of attention for sure.
Yeah, I thought it was really good, like surprisingly good. I thought so. There was a couple of other like Day of the Dead based animated films that came out, or at least like one other not that long ago. And I watched that one and wasn't that into it, and so this just kind of felt like another Day of the Dead animated film, and but it surprised me. It moved me a lot, got me very teary eyed at points.
Oh, definitely. Me too. I was crying in the theater.
Yeah,
I haven't been that emotionally invested in a Disney Pixar movie since Up. I don't think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Or did Toy Story 3 come out after Up? Because that one
Toy Story 3 did come out after Up.
I think
it did. It came out after Up. It did, and it made me cry.
Yeah.
I'm a wimp when it comes to these movies. I think
they know how to get me. They can make me every now and then, as long as their movies aren't about cars, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Or sequels to Cars.
Yeah. All right. So we can move on to the next category we've got here, which is Best Director, which is Christopher Nolan for Dunkirk, Jordan Peele for Get Out, Greta Gerwig for Lady Bird, Paul Thomas Anderson for Phantom Thread, and Guillermo del Toro for The Shape of Water. Yeah, they all seem good to me. I haven't seen Phantom Thread yet.
I would say he's not going to win for that.
Yeah.
Not that he doesn't deserve a nomination, but we've seen Paul Thomas Anderson, I think, get nominated for higher highs. This is not a bad movie. In fact, it's a very, very good movie, The Phantom Thread. But I don't think it's it's in the top tier of Paul Thomas Anderson movies. But that's hard to do because the top tier of Paul Thomas Anderson movies is all great movies.
Yeah, it's very high.
Yeah. So, anyway, I think of all of these, I think the one that excites me the most would be Guillermo del Toro being nominated for The Shape of Water, because I have not been a huge fan of his movies the past few years. So this is kind of a return to form that I would like to be rewarded.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I said, the last films that he made were like Pacific Rim and Crimson Peak, which I didn't see Crimson Peak, but I don't know, it seemed like he moved away from things like that brought like him to my attention, like Pan's Labyrinth and Devil's Backbone,
right,
and whatnot. So happy to see him do something like The Shape of Water, which we'll discuss later. But I think he's good for it. I kind of lean towards Greta Gerwig in this, just because I think it's the most exciting for me, just because the film is so good and it's her first film, and hopefully she makes more, and I'm sure winning a Best Director would inspire her to make more.
Definitely. I think it's a strong debut, and I am definitely excited to see what comes next for Greta Gerwig as far as her directorial career.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so the next category we have here is Best Supporting Actress. We have Mary J. Blige for Mudbound, Allison Janney for I, Tonya, Leslie Manville for Phantom Thread, Laurie Metcalf for Lady Bird, and Octavia Spencer for The Shape of Water.
Apparently I need to watch Mudbound as I'm going through these.
I guess so, yeah.
That is becoming more and more apparent.
Yeah, things that pop up on Netflix like that tend to be out of my periphery, and they kind of slip by me sometimes.
Yeah, things on Netflix are, if you haven't like heard of them prior, they like really get lost in like the shuffle. Like it's like
right.
Like you have to really like examine to like find these gems. It's like kind of a big mess to look at Netflix to me.
It really is, especially with their original shows now. Like they put out like 20 or more shows a year, and I feel like maybe one or two of them are actually genuinely good shows, but man, you wouldn't know it because you don't get any advertisements for them or no one talks about them.
Yeah.
So I kind of wish Netflix would be a little better about like unceremoniously just dumping quality content out with all their crappy content.
Yeah, for sure. That being said,
yeah.
I did see the trailer for it on there, so I guess I did end up running across it.
Yeah, we've heard of it, so I guess that's one thing.
Yeah. But so out of these, I think I haven't seen Phantom Thread still since we talked about it 2 minutes ago. But I like Allison Janney, Tanya.
Really?
I think she's really good in that, and I'm maybe a little biased because I just like her in everything that she's in.
Sure. I think she's great in that movie as well. I think of all of these actresses, I would say that I've seen. Obviously, I can't speak for Mary J. Blige. Leslie Manville or Laurie Metcalf were the ones that stood out to me and have made me revisit in my brain their performances since then. I think about them, especially I would say Laurie Metcalf.
Yeah, she's really good. She's the other one that I really like, and I guess their roles are kind of similar.
I think so. I think the Allison Janney role lends itself more to this kind of award season type buzz. It's a biopic. She's uglied herself up a bit. It seems like a sure thing. Although I am wondering if the politics around this movie will kind of stop her from getting the win, because I believe she won a Golden Globe for this performance, or a SAG.
Yeah.
And I believe when she was up on stage, she tried to thank Tonya Harding, and I don't know if that went over well with people.
Maybe not. I haven't even heard of this.
I think between the two of it would probably be Allison Janney or Laurie Metcalf.
Yeah, fair enough.
Octavia Spencer, I hate to say it, I don't think that was an Oscar-worthy performance in The Shape of Water. She didn't really have a whole lot to do.
Yeah, I think she was on par, for her. She's good.
Yeah, that's
she's
true.
really good, but nothing exceptional for her, I don't think.
It's just not a great part, I don't think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so supporting actor. Best supporting actor here. We've got Willem Dafoe, The Florida Project, Woody Harrelson, 3 Billboards, Richard Jenkins, The Shape of Water, Christopher Plummer, All the Money in the World, and Sam Rockwell for 3 Billboards. I gotta go. Well, first of all, I guess last week we talked about 3 Billboards, and I think we both ripped on Woody Harrelson pretty hard, or at least I did. And so I'm really surprised to see his nomination.
We did, yeah. Well, you did, and I agreed with you. So, I guess I'm a party to this too.
Yeah. So I was just surprised to see that nomination. I think he's a weak link in terms of performance in the movie.
I would say I'm surprised that he got a nomination. I would say he's the weak link of the movie. But I would say that Woody Harrelson is frequently great. So I'm okay with him being nominated for an Oscar. I don't think he'll win for this one, but I'd be happy almost any other year if he gets nominated for something else.
Yeah, generally I like him. But yeah, this out of the ones I've seen, both Richard Jenkins and Sam Rockwell, I would choose over him.
Oh sure. I mean, and my personal favorite is Richard Jenkins. I haven't seen Willem Dafoe in The Florida Project. I've seen Christopher Plummer in All the Money in the World, and he was really good. But yeah, Richard Jenkins, man, that guy, he delivers every time.
He always knows how to make me feel really bad for him without doing a lot, right?
Yeah, he can disarm me real quick with his sad face.
Yeah, like him in Burn After Reading.
I'm not here representing hard bodies.
Yeah, I feel so bad for him throughout that movie because he just clearly likes Frances McDormand, and she's just ignoring him, and just he doesn't really do a lot or say a lot, but I probably feel the most for him out of any character in that movie. Honestly, I mean, we'll get into Shape of Water and him in there and too, but I would probably say the same thing for Shape of Water.
Yeah, he's so good in that movie. But spoilers for Shape of Water, I guess.
Is it?
No. Spoiler for anything he's going to act in the future. He'll probably be good.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right, so next we've got leading actress. We're up to the leading now. We've got Sally Hawkins in The Shape of Water, Frances McDormand in 3 Billboards, Margot Robbie in I, Tonya, Oh my goodness.
Saoirse.
Saoirse Ronan in Lady Bird. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Meryl Streep in The Post, surprising no one.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think another notch on her belt.
Yeah, I think for lack of interest, I don't think anyone really wants Meryl Streep to win, even though we all know she's fantastic in everything. But at this point, Meryl Streep getting nominated for an Oscar means nothing to me anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, it's like the sun rising and setting.
Right, yeah. If she acts in a movie next year, she will be nominated for an Oscar, most likely.
Yeah, and that's not to say she doesn't deserve them.
No, that's
or
exactly,
that she's not good. It's
right.
just, if you see the sunrise and sunset every single day, you get used to it.
Yeah, exactly. If Daniel Day-Lewis acted in more movies, he'd probably have an Oscar nomination every year.
Yep.
What I think stands out to me is Saoirse Ronan for Lady Bird in this one.
100%. That's who I would choose if I could.
She's been great ever since she was young. I first saw her in Atonement. She's still young, I guess, but she's a grown lady now, and she's been making some really great movies.
Yeah, she doesn't feel young because like you said, she was in Atonement, which had Oscar buzz. She might have been nominated that year.
Yeah, I've been watching this girl for like 11 years now.
But I was gonna say that was like 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago, that we saw her. So yeah, it feels like she's been around forever. But yeah, I think she's great, and everyone else here is good. I just think she's just got the most interesting things to do out of everybody in here.
Oh, certainly.
I mean, Sally Hawkins deserves some credit. She did silent performance essentially.
Yeah, of which she is fantastic too. Yeah. But Lady Bird, to me, that's a movie that just sticks with me more, I think.
Yeah, and I think we'll do that. We'll do a big review on that one soon.
Yeah, which is exciting.
Yeah. So, best lead actor. We've got Timothée Chalamet, Call Me By Your Name, Daniel Day-Lewis for Phantom Thread, Daniel Kaluuya, if I'm saying that right, for Get Out, Gary Oldman, Darkest Hour, and Denzel Washington for Roman J. Israel, Esquire.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what I assume ESQ stands for.
I assume so as well.
Yeah, which I learned from Bill and Ted.
Yeah, which I need to see that movie, actually.
Me too. It's not the only one I haven't seen most of these.
I haven't seen Darkest Hour or Roman J. Israel, Esquire, but I've seen Get Out, Phantom Thread, and Call Me By Your Name.
Yeah, I think Gary Oldman in Darkest Hour feels like the type of performance that would win an Oscar.
Right, but because it feels like that type of performance leads me to believe that he probably won't win, just like Denzel. Those seem like the safe ones.
Sure.
Or I guess maybe Daniel Day-Lewis might seem that way as well, but I think Phantom Thread is a lot wackier of a movie than what the trailer or what a lot of people might think based on just the fact that it's like a costume period piece with Daniel Day-Lewis. Yeah, I don't think it's the type of movie that normally does get nominated for Oscars, but maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know. But it feels like probably Timothée Chalamet's year or Daniel Kaluuya.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. It'd be interesting to see sort of a new guard, because everyone else here has won Oscars or been around the Oscars at least for so long. Like they're a bit of old guard, like the same old names sort of. So it'd be very interesting to see Daniel Kaluuya or Timothée Chalamet win.
I would like Daniel Kaluuya to win, to be honest with you. I think his performance in Get Out is really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And without such a good performance, I don't know if that movie would be as good. Like he's what brings you into the movie, right? And like makes it, I don't know, like it could be very silly, I guess. You know what I mean? Like the plot of the movie.
It could feel a little heavy-handed maybe. I don't know, but it doesn't. It works. He sells it. Everyone sells it. Yeah, Daniel Kaluuya, I think he's really good in that movie. There's like the part where, man, he's just crying so much and his eyes are so red.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it just stresses me out seeing his face like that. Like there's scenes in that movie that genuinely stress me out. And I actually am excited to talk about that movie when we get the chance.
Yeah, we'll do that one soon. and which I guess is a good segue.
Yeah, to Best Picture. So the final category we're going to talk about before we move on to our actual feature reviews are the Best Picture nominees: Call Me By Your Name, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, The Shape of Water, and then, of course, 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri.
Yep. And, I mean, for the record, we are going to talk about each one of these. We've done 3 Billboards. We're doing 3 of them this week, and we're going to get to all of the other ones, I think, by the time the Oscars happen. So I don't know I don't know how in-depth we want to talk about each one of these right now. I will say that out of all of the ones I've seen, I feel like 3 Billboards had a lot of buzz coming out of like Golden Globes, but it's certainly my least favorite.
I think it has the most buzz, but also because it has the most backlash.
Yeah.
At this point, I can't hear anyone talk about 3 Billboards without also talking about the backlash around it. So I think the fact that it's so divisive might have something going against it. I also think, I don't know if you've seen it yet, I don't think The Post stands a chance.
Yeah, I haven't watched that one yet.
Yeah. So I'll wait and save my main thoughts for that movie until we actually talk about it. But I think 3 Billboards and The Post are probably the ones I feel the least confident about.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like Get Out is a bit of a sticks out like a sore thumb a bit in this bunch. I think one maybe because it was, a film from way earlier in the year, which is rare to get on these to make it into like Best Picture.
Yeah, it's crazy that it even got remembered enough to be nominated, which is awesome.
Yeah, and then it just being kind of a horror, like weird horror movie,
like social satire.
Yeah. So it's just a bit of an oddball, and that to me that makes it really, really stand out. But also makes me feel like it's almost like I don't want to say it's like a token nomination, but like it's nominated to include it, but I don't think it has a chance to win.
I would say it probably doesn't. I would also say Darkest Hour probably doesn't have a chance at winning either. But I don't know.
Yeah,
we could be wrong.
We'll see. I think it's interesting. Is there anything that you wish was on here that's not?
That is a good question. I would like to have seen. Here, let me actually look real quick.
I can talk, I guess, while you're.
Yeah, go ahead.
While you're looking, I'll say that I watched The Killing of a Sacred Deer recently, and while that is a little bit more in like the Get Out territory of like in terms of like type of movie, and a little bit different than like your typical Best Picture nominee, I think that movie is incredible. Like I thought it was really, really good, and I guess we're not gonna get to talk about it unless we decide to cover it like post Oscars.
Right.
But I think that movie is so good and like just so perfect in the way that it was like shot and the sound and the performances, because they're all of those things are a little offbeat from like a typical movie. Have you seen Killing of a Sacred Deer?
No, not yet. No.
Yeah, I mean, you get that vibe from the trailer. I think. Like,
I haven't seen the trailer.
You haven't?
I only know about this movie because it's the same guy who did The Lobster, and I haven't seen that either. But just like The Killing of a Sacred Deer, when it came out, I heard nothing but awesome things about it.
Yeah, I like Killing of a Sacred Deer a lot more than I like The Lobster.
Yeah,
so and I did like
I haven't seen either, so I need to see both. Yeah, and I am embarrassed that I have not.
Yeah, and it's one of few movies, that I've watched where I've just been like super into it from the get go. Like, I never once did I check like my like phone or the clock that's like underneath my TV on my cable box to like how long has this been on, Right. And there are other like several of the other Best Picture nominees where I did glance down at the clock and like try to like work out how much time is left in the movie.
Yeah, which is never good.
No, I mean, it's hard. It's really hard not to do. I don't even know that I would count that as like a detriment towards the movie, because that clock is like right underneath my TV, and I probably need to find a better place for it. But like, I think it's bad if like I check my phone, and like actually like turn my head. But really, for like the cable box, I should have glanced down. So I don't know if it's that bad of a thing for the movie, but it's certainly a compliment to a film that keeps me from doing that.
Yeah, certainly. It's the highest praise of a movie I've heard you give in quite some time.
I've built expectations too much.
I know. So we will have to actually do an episode on it so I can tell you how you've disappointed me. No, I think the only movie on here that I wish would have gotten a Best Picture nod was probably Blade Runner. I know it's a sequel, it's a franchise, but man, it didn't have to be as good as it was. I'm a huge fan of the original Blade Runner, and the whole time this movie was being made, I never wanted it to happen. And when it finally came out and it was good, and it was so much better than it had to be, it was slow, and it didn't talk down to you, and it was long, and it felt like the first one in tone. It
is a compliment to a movie when you don't necessarily want to see it, or you're not excited about it, or you're like not looking forward to watching it, and it completely like changes your mind and turns you around and like keeps you, in the seat the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. So I think just the sheer relief I felt like 30 minutes into that movie was just significant because I was not looking forward to it at all, like you were saying. So anyway, I would have liked to have seen at least a Blade Runner nomination. Maybe get rid of the Post.
Sure. I mean, I think we have 9 and they can nominate up to 10, so
yeah,
I don't think we necessarily have to go there. But to include both of ours, we would have to eliminate one, and why not the Post? I say that having not seen the movie. That's completely unbased. I just said it because you said it.
We'll talk about it. Like the Post is just one of those movies where like it feels timely and it feels important, but it also feels like it's trying to be timely and important.
Right.
I guess is my problem with it. So I don't know. Anything else you want to talk about with the Oscar nominations before we get rolling?
No, I think that's it. I just said my beef with the one film I thought got snubbed and left out, which shouldn't have. I guess actually Shape of Water has the most nominations, which is interesting and surprising, I think. And some schools of thought, or at least I often kind of think that it would make sense, is like that the Best Picture is the film that wins like the most awards and maybe gets the most nominations.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's not necessarily the case, but I think it is worth considering that like no matter what happens, Shape of Water got like the most nominations by a lot. Like I think that it got 13 and the next highest was 8, and which was Dunkirk. And a lot of Dunkirks were technical.
Sure.
Right? So
it is a very technically impressive movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good for Shape of Water.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it soon.
Very soon. So, yeah, let's move into the film discussions. And I guess before we get into them, just to reiterate, we're going to be spoiler-free on these. And so you can listen safely if you haven't seen the movie. And I guess we'll re-edit this and take that out and record something else if we screw up and spoil.
Yeah. Or we can just at least say we will do our best not to spoil.
Yeah.
And
cool.
What spoilers we do have will be very vague.
Yes. So, all right, first up, we're going to do Call Me By Your Name.
Non vi sembra ineducato come dice later? Arrogante.
I don't think he's arrogant.
Just watch. This is how he'll say goodbye to us when the time comes. With his later.
Meanwhile, we'll have to put up with him for 6 long weeks, won't we, darling?
I think he's shy. You'll grow to like him.
And what if I grow to hate him?
No, Chino.
Okay, so Call Me By Your Name was directed by Luca Guadagnino. That's my best attempt at pronunciation. I'm not going to try to do an Italian accent, which might be a slightly better attempt at pronunciation. But anyways, it's adapted from a book. It takes place in 1983, and it's basically about a 17-year-old kid played by Timothée Chalamet who lives in Italy with his family, and his dad's like a professor, and he has I guess like a graduate student or some guy come, he's played by Armie Hammer, and stay with them for 6 weeks, and Timothée Chalamet and Armie Hammer develop a relationship. It's a bit of a gay romance. Yeah, I think that's a good synopsis.
Yeah, that's the basic plot of the movie. The movie is not exactly plot heavy.
No, not at all. So I guess, do you want to go ahead and what did you think of this one?
I thought it was a really, really good movie that I maybe got a little too excited for before I saw it. First of all, it's beautiful. This makes northern Italy look like, I don't know, just the best place in the world to be.
Yeah, you want to be there.
Like the countryside, everything looks so good. I'll tell you one thing about this movie that I was not expecting, and that was Armie Hammer. That is a guy that I have seen mainly in things like Social Network, Free Fire, Lone Ranger, which those movies have nothing in common. But in those movies, he's always kind of very much the same kind of guy. Very arrogant, very cocky, very, like the hero, right? Like a leading man type guy. Even though he's not the leading man in Social Network, but, you've seen it. But this movie is complete departure from what he normally does and what I've normally seen him in. Yeah, I thought he did really, really good in this as well. I'm sad that he didn't get more recognition for this movie.
Yeah, I thought he was really good, surprisingly good. I guess I haven't really seen him flex his acting chops too much.
He's really funny in Free Fire. Have you seen that?
No, I have not.
You should give it a watch.
Yeah, and I think he's really well cast in this, and I actually found it kind of humorous at times because it's almost funny how handsome he is, right? Like he's
it's
so
the voice.
Ridiculously good looking, and his voice, right, too, is like he's got such a ridiculously nice voice and is just so handsome that like it's just kind of funny. Like at times you just like I don't know how intentional that was, but there were just certain things he would do that I just like couldn't help but like smile at because it was just so handsome. Like he had these like short shorts and was riding a bike around and stuff, and
yeah, he had the charm turned up to 11.
Yes, yeah, and which I thought worked because I think you just kind of get it when you're supposed to find him charming, right? Yeah,
you want to find him charming because is it Elio is the main character's name?
Yes, Elio.
Elio finds him that way, and so you're almost observing Armie Hammer through his eyes, right, the whole time, and you get it. I mean, it's made well enough to where you know what the attraction is, you understand it, and you even like root for them to get it going.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's important because I think you and I had a friend who we were talking to about having seen this movie, and this was before I watched it, and you had seen it, and she had said that she watched the trailer and was not very interested because she worried that Armie Hammer would be a little like predatory in it.
Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about that later, but yeah, keep going.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the trailer for the film, but that couldn't be further from the truth in my mind.
Right. At
least not in like not in any way that seems like creepy or weird or anything like that. And
sure.
And I don't know. I think that is a testament to the film being from Elio's point of view, right?
Right. Yeah, because Elio is the one who wants this to happen, so he's not the one being taken advantage of. Right.
Exactly. Kind of going off of that a little bit, somewhat related. I did want to talk about the cinematography a bit because I found it interesting. Especially considering the film being from Elio's point of view, is that it's a good looking film, right? And there's nothing like, I think it, like, as you said, like Italy looks really great in it, but the cinematography to me isn't stunning, right?
No,
it's kind of very simple and not overly glamorous. Like at no point in my opinion did the film ever call attention to the cinematography, or like did the cinematography ever call attention to itself? You know, if you take something like Blade Runner, for example, like I feel like the cinematography is constantly like being like, look how good I look, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, I agree with that.
And I think that works really well for the movie to like have that like simplistic style, because Elio spent time there, and while it's very pretty, it doesn't insist on like glorifying or like glamorizing. I want to say glamorizing, even though I'm not sure that's a word. Like glamorizing this Italian countryside. It does look, normal, not like surreal in any way or like overly glorified.
Right. No, I agree. It seems inviting, it seems warm, and it seems pretty, but there's not any shots that are framed or lit in such a way that they draw attention to themselves or would make the movie stand out for anything like best cinematography in my eyes.
Right. Yeah.
Or if it come anywhere close to it, even.
Yeah. And I don't think it would, because it doesn't call attention to itself. Right. Mm-hmm. And it's a bit like, I guess if you look at like something like La Dolce Vita from like Fellini, mm-hmm. which is very much like in love with Italy.
Very.
And kind of accentuates that. I think this one feels a little bit more simple and realistic. And I really appreciate that. I think that is the right call.
Definitely, especially for a movie like this where you don't want to be distracted by pretty shots. No. I mean, maybe some people do. I don't want to speak for everyone. Some people like pretty shots in every movie.
Yeah.
But I think this movie, it would have distracted from what was important.
Yeah, which is the characters and the emotion and the attraction between the two, and the performances. That's what really shines. Right.
And you kind of mentioned this earlier, and I did want to actually talk about this. This is a movie about a relationship between a 17-year-old boy and a 30-year-old or 30-something-year-old man. And it doesn't feel predatory and it doesn't feel creepy, but by its nature, it almost kind of is. Do you think that it's problematic at all, or do you think that it's fine? And if it's not problematic, would it be problematic if it was a 17-year-old girl and a 30-year-old man?
Yeah,
that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's a difficult question to answer, I think.
Could we even view Armie Hammer as a good man at all if this was a 17-year-old girl who was trying to get with him, and even if he ended up like, I don't know. I don't want an answer. Obviously, it's just food for thought.
Yeah, it's a interesting thing to balance, right? And I think that is a challenge of making a film like this. Is
sure.
Staying on the right side of the line,
right?
Because it's a line that you have to walk. I think you're right. There's no way around it for most people, and I think that some people will have a problem with it no matter what.
Sure, and I think and my whole favorite scene of the movie is actually between Elio and his father, played by Michael Stuhlbarg.
Sure, Stuhlbarg.
Anyway, that guy is great. He is in, I think it's 3 movies this year that have been nominated for Best Picture. Just so you know. I don't know if you realize this.
Yeah. I know he's in Shape of Water.
He's in Shape of Water. He's in Call Me By Your Name. And he's also in The Post. But his performance in this movie is my favorite thing about this movie. In fact, he has my favorite scene of the whole movie at one point where he's talking to his son. And I won't get into specifics, but...
Yeah. That's mine. That's mine too. I know the scene you're talking about. I actually got really choked up.
I cried. He cut straight to the center of me and just tore down my walls, and I cried. He was just so unbelievably good in that scene. So worth the admission price alone, just to see Michael Stuhlbarg be awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that scene in particular, trying to be non-specific, handles a lot of the problems that we're talking about.
Right. If that scene hadn't been there, we would not be so sure how we feel about this. Maybe.
I think so. I think that one kind of puts the bow on the package, metaphorically speaking.
I agree, but because it so obviously does that, it also takes me out of it a bit and kind of stops me from really being crazy about this movie. It's my favorite scene, but I also feel like it's maybe a little convenient for storytelling purposes, so that it's trying to manipulate our emotions and make us think that something that might be disturbing is not disturbing.
I think that's a fair point. I mean, I think, just real quick, I think by that point in the movie, I had gotten, I guess, used to the story and gotten to know the characters enough in the whole situation that I didn't necessarily I'd feel that way. I had moved past my suspicions, because there was a point in the movie that I was like, is this going to turn out to be kind of predatory, kind of weird? is Armie Hammer going to end up looking like a bad person for doing this and like taking advantage at some point? And I think by that point in the movie, I had gotten used to what's going on with him, I guess, and I no longer had that fear.
Right.
And I guess another movie worth bringing up. Do you remember the film In Education?
I do.
I mean, I think that's a similar story with a young girl.
It's true.
In
but if
high school and then with an older man.
Right.
And in that film, her parents never seemed to have an issue with his age. And I don't know that he ever comes across as like creepy or predatory, but like in that film, it does end up being that he was definitely just using her.
Yeah, spoilers for An Education. But the thing is, in
that's an
that
old film.
movie,
I can spoil that, right?
I thought it was creepy. So, but the parents didn't. I agree with you. So, I guess.
Yeah, it's just another film that I think tried to walk that line as well, and is an example. So, like, if you've seen An Education, listener, depending on how you feel about that, it may inform you of how you might feel about Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah, that's a good double feature right there.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. I guess overall opinions on Call Me by Your Name. I mean, I really liked it. I thought it was very simple. It reminded me of films like The Best of Youth. Did you ever see that one?
I did not. That's that really long Italian movie, right?
Yeah, and it just kind of takes place, like over a certain span of time, and it's in this, to me, a foreign country that I've never been to.
Sure.
So it has that kind of charm about it, and it's not super plot heavy. It's just more about a point of time, the experiences that the characters have, and the relationships that happen during that, and it's just very simple in that sense. There's not like a big, third act showdown or anything like that. And I really like that type of movie.
And before we actually finish up talking about Call Me by Your Name, I think no discussion would be complete without talking about Timothée Chalamet. Who is, of course, nominated this year, and deservedly so, I would say. What did you think about him?
I think he's really good in it. I think he's an interesting guy to watch and very natural. Like I thought he was really good, and he's also in Lady Bird. He really stuck out to me in that one of a really interesting kid. He was the
cool band kid, right?
Yeah. I almost said something spoilery for Lady Bird, but I won't. Yes, he's in that, and he really stuck out to me and like made an impression on me then, and then seeing him in this just solidified like how good he is. And I think he's 22 currently, and I guess would have made the movie when he was 20 or 21.
Born in 95.
Yep. And
he was in Interstellar.
Was he?
Mm-hmm.
What did he do in Interstellar?
Tom at 15 years old.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Which I guess is Matthew McConaughey's kid.
Yeah, but I mean, I think this is in Call Me by Your Name, like a brave performance for someone so young, and I think like part of what makes the movie work, and for me keeps it from going into any sort of weird territory, is his performance and his character, because seems like mature in a way, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
And at least in some ways, I guess. And then there's just certain things that he does that, are brave things to do, I think, like on screen, that the entire world is going to see. And
definitely being so young too, and being so sure
at his age.
Yeah. One thing that's actually interesting, which I'll go ahead and just make a brief sidebar. Apparently, from the same director, Luca Guadagnino, there is a Call Me by Your Name sequel on IMDb with Michael Stuhlbarg attached to it, but not Armie Hammer or Timothée Chalamet.
Oh, weird. I wonder if it's based off of another book.
I'm not sure. He's billed as Mr. Perlman again, so that would be interesting.
Yeah, or maybe it's the same main guy, or
I guess it's about the parents, because both the actress who played the mom, Amira Kassar,
mm-hmm.
and Michael Stobarg are both attached to this as of right now.
Cool. I would watch it.
I would too. Anyway, that's a fun fact.
Absolutely. So yeah, and let's move on to Dunkirk.
We've wasted the day. I share your frustration, Colonel. Johnny! Grounded trawler taking fire.
They're breaking through the dunes to the east.
This is it.
Yeah, so Dunkirk was directed by Christopher Nolan, and it is about basically the Battle of Dunkirk, which is about the British and French forces trying to basically get off the beach in the Battle of Dunkirk and get back to England. And so the whole movie is basically just a bunch of soldiers struggling to survive. It's told from 3 different perspectives: the ground, the sea, and the air. In normal Christopher Nolan fashion, he even plays with the timeline a bit between the 2 stories going on at once, which I think rewards multiple viewings.
Yeah, I agree. I actually watched this one twice, and I'm glad I watched it a second time, because the first time I was a little confused.
Disoriented, maybe?
Yeah. And I didn't quite understand that at the beginning of the film he gives you, like, okay, here's the land, and this land is going to play out. Everything that happens in this plays out like over a week, right?
Right.
And then here's the air. Everything in the air is playing out over 1 hour, right? I think that's
right. Yeah. The air is 1 hour and the sea is 1 day, I think, right?
Yeah. And I didn't quite understand what the 1 week, 1 day, 1 hour meant the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely better a second time, in my opinion, but for that reason.
The first time I saw it was on 70 millimeter, which was beautiful. The second time I saw it was on just basically like my TV at home. And I had a sound bar and I had a 65-inch TV, so it was still a good experience. But man, does this movie really benefit from being seen in a movie theater. It's just so pretty. And I also kind of find the home video releases of Christopher Nolan's movies, when it switches between IMAX and a different aspect ratio, I find that distracting.
Yeah, I was very distracted by that. Actually, I should have that down to talk about too, is that switching between the 2 really stands out on a TV.
Yeah, it really does. I almost wish he would have just filmed the whole movie in 1 aspect ratio. I don't understand why he didn't, but I don't know. Anyway, but beyond that, this might be my favorite Christopher Nolan movie. I think it is. The first time I saw it, I wasn't sure. But as time goes on, I don't know, man. I think it's a really well put together movie. It's short. It's really tight. It's very singular in its idea. I don't know. I feel like he is in complete control of his craft here. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think the length is something worth considering, especially in the age of like the 2.5 hour blockbuster movies, and which Nolan has been a big part of ushering in. Right.
And he could have had B plots in this movie that strung it out, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's just a sign of like as you said, him being in control and knowing exactly what's right for this film, that it is it's like an hour 45, something like that. And to have the constraint when like you can, include all those extra shots that you've maybe fallen in love with as a director, because you're Christopher Nolan and all your other movies are 2.5 hours long. So you could make this one 2 hours, but like to have the restraint to cutting it down to an hour 45, like it's very streamlined and doesn't meander in any way that feels like it doesn't add up or mean anything. Like it's really solid, like streamlined story.
Right. And that's all it really needs to be. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if there's a woman speaking role in the whole movie.
No, I don't think so. Maybe
like a nurse.
Yeah.
Handing out towels or something, or toast. But
yeah, I'm going to say no. I think you're absolutely right.
Right, and I mean, there's a lot of characters in this movie, but not a lot of character development. Not a lot of. It's just events that happen, and you're experiencing it with these people. You are meant to just experience Dunkirk more than anything. It's loud. It's intense. It's like, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Christopher Nolan, wasn't it rumored that he did something to the sound to purposely make you uncomfortable?
I think there are certain things. I know that there's like a ticking clock in the score, which is
keeps you on pins and needles.
Yeah, which is kind of obvious. But there's this other thing. I watched like a video on it. It's called like the shepherd's tone or something like that. And it's essentially a way of like playing a scale on an instrument at like several different octaves, and then repeating that scale, but having one of the octaves fade out and the other one fade in. And essentially it sounds like, even though you're just playing the same scale over and over, like it sounds like the notes are just climbing and the music is just building and building and building, and you can just do that forever and it'll sound like the film, it'll sound like the tension and the music is building and mounting, but it never does. Right. It's you're actually listening to the same thing over and over again, but it doesn't sound that way.
Right. Like there's a scene early in this movie where two guys have a stretcher and they are like running across a beach trying to get to a ship before it takes off. And man, the score during that, I don't know, I couldn't be still in my seat. I was just like squirming around. It had the complete desired effect on me, basically, is the score just made me just incredibly nervous. I wasn't able to like focus on several times throughout the movie, and I almost think that seeing it a second time makes it more stressful, if that makes sense. Like I feel like the second time I saw it, I was able to, I guess, appreciate all these things, whereas the first time you see it, like I said earlier, you're kind of just experiencing it, and the second time you see it, I almost feel like you're able to really see just how in control Christopher Nolan is at everything, right? Like the composition of the shots, the color, the pacing of the editing at the beginning, the score, everything. There's just not much about this movie that doesn't technically impress me.
No, I think the cinematography is on point. It's really good. All the stuff that's in IMAX is like really great looking. It looks really grand, and you get a really like a nice big like sense of scope to everything.
Absolutely.
I do think that if we're gonna be really critical, especially talking about Nolan being in control, as you said, the switching back and forth between IMAX and regular aspect ratio, there are times when it bothers me, and I think particularly there's a scene where we have the characters who are on the boat. Oh yes, definitely mixed up with the firefight with the oil. Air. And and it's cutting back and forth between the air fight, which is shot in IMAX, and the boat, which is shot in like normal 2:35 widescreen aspect ratio. And it's cutting back and forth. Like we'll get one shot of the air battle, one shot of the people on the boat, back to the air battle. And like that is the part where, to me, where it's like you should have just chosen one, at least for that section, because a lot of the other times, we cut to the airplanes for a while and then we're back to the boat. Right. For a while. But when we're intercutting them, I think like
it's really noticeable.
Small misstep. I to me to not like go consistent.
Yeah, I agree
with one aspect ratio for those scenes.
I totally agree. And one other complaint I had that I noticed the second time I was watching it, and this is actually something that my girlfriend mentioned as well, and she had like the same thought. Just she arrived at it completely separately than me, which was that the mole storyline that takes place over a week, I do not feel like he condensed that time to feel like a week. It feels barely longer than the sea and the air battles to me.
Yeah, it feels like maybe 2 days.
Yeah, I feel like that's because we only see like one nighttime of them on the beach, and the other time is like Kenneth Branagh's character. Is he just standing on the dock for like a week? Does he not do anything else? Does he not walk somewhere else? It looks like he's literally just standing on the dock and doesn't eat or sleep or do anything or go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
He's literally just standing at the end of the dock and just like frowning at the events unfolding. So I feel like if I have to be nitpicky about Dunkirk and I have to criticize, I think that's probably my biggest complaint, which is that I feel like maybe we could have used a little bit more on the ground to feel like the time was condensed to spread over a week, you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah. For sure. And I think one thing that I do want to touch on to complement the film, or something that I think is really working in it, I think you might have mentioned this a little bit earlier, so I'm not, hopefully not stealing your thought too much, but the fact that like none of the characters really have that much character development in the film. Like, we don't get flashbacks to like who they were before. You know, we don't have like what is sort of a cliche in some of the war movies is that like someone has a baby back home with like a newborn baby with a wife.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like we don't turn these soldiers or these people in the film into like individuals. They're all very anonymous. Like, I honestly can't tell you anyone's name in the film.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter.
No, like, do you know any of the characters' names? I'm just curious.
No.
Yeah, and I've seen
guy,
it twice.
The French. Well, that's a spoiler. Just kidding. The main guy, Harry Lloyd.
Is that?
No, that's not Harry Lloyd. What's that
Harry
guy?
Styles?
Harry Styles.
Harry Styles, the guy from One Direction.
Yeah, that's the one. Not Harry Lloyd.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the guy from Game of Thrones and a few other things.
Yeah. But anyways, like, so you really, like, the characters don't have names. They're sort of anonymous, right? And I think that just works really well for the movie and making the movie rewatchable, because it's almost like you said, you experience the movie, you go into it as an experience. It's not about, X guy trying to get home to like his family because he's the last brother alive, right? Like in like Saving Private Ryan,
right? For
example, it's like, it's just like it works because they're everybody, right? Like they're anybody and everybody. They're you, they're whoever, right?
Exactly, right. And the same with Cillian Murphy's character on the boat. He's the soldier that is found in the water who is suffering from PTSD.
Yeah, shell shock.
Mm-hmm. I think that's probably my favorite story arc in the whole movie. That feels the most like a movie to me, is that particular story arc. It feels like it has the most plot, it has the most like contrivances, I guess, in its arc.
Yeah. I do know someone's name in the movie. George, the boy. The kid was also in a Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Oh, well, good job.
Whatever. Sorry, but I think there's a reason that I know his name, which I won't get into.
One thing I actually like about this movie is it's like the little victories, like the beginning. I was talking about this part earlier. Whenever they were carrying the stretcher down the dock, there's a place where they have to cross like a makeshift bridge, which is basically just like a board laid across a huge gap in the dock where there's no more dock left. Yeah. And so like two guys carrying a stretcher have to like walk single file on like this like 2x4 like across a gap, and when that happens you're so nervous, and they're like tiptoeing across, and like you can actually see all the other soldiers on the beach just standing around watching them try to cross this, carrying the stretcher. As soon as they make it across, you can see like all the soldiers just like clapping
and cheering.
And these guys have just been like, they just need any kind of silver lining, right? Like they need like little victories to help them get through this like god awful week that they're going through. And I really like that.
Yeah, and I think that's just like the mood of the film is I think done favors by moments like those, right? Like it's it could be very dreary, constantly dreary to watch this sort of thing, and at least that's kind of what I expected when I go in. I expected basically like a full movie of like the first scene of like Saving Private Ryan, where they're landing on the beach, where it's just really tragic and depressing and like sad because people are just dying left and right, and I expected like a whole movie of that scene basically going into Dunkirk, but there is a lot more uplifting and hope, and there's like that moment is a good example of that it's like it keeps the focus away from like making it too depressing, I think.
Sure. And there's not even really any straight up battle sequences. The only action sequences there are just our characters trying to survive. I guess there's action sequences in the air. But like on the ground, there's none of that Saving Private Ryan beach stuff. You know, this movie's PG-13. I think there's barely any blood in the whole movie. There's barely even any Germans in the whole movie. I can only think of like 1 or 2 shots where you even see enemy soldiers. Yeah,
it's very focused on the English.
Oh, and I'll tell you
French soldiers.
I'll tell you one thing is I really like how Tom Hardy can act with his eyes.
Sure.
He, I don't know what it is, man. He's got very expressive eyes. He doesn't have to do a whole lot. He's just got to look places and squint a little, or I don't know. But it seems like he's doing a whole lot, even though he might not even be doing anything. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he's good.
Yeah, he is good. Everybody's good in it, you know. And even like characters like Tom Hardy and Kenneth Branagh and Harry Styles, like they almost slip into like that anonymous soldier or like, you know, military member role. Like we know who they are, of course, so like it's really recognizable that it's Tom Hardy.
Even though you don't really see his face very much. Most of the time he's behind a big like flight mask.
Yeah, and him probably being like the biggest, most recognizable star, at least like you and me, I'm sure there's a whole group of younger girls who will recognize Harry Styles over Tom Hardy.
Sure.
But maybe it is like a smart, intentional choice to make Tom Hardy the guy who has a thing over his face most of the movie. But even those bigger actors, I think, like almost drift into that anonymous role, and we only recognize them because they recognize them. Like it doesn't necessarily feel like I'm watching a Tom Hardy movie. You know what I mean?
Oh no, definitely not.
And I like that about it. I think that just lends itself to like how rewatchable the movie is. Like I loved it so much more the second time, and I think if I watched it a third time, I'd love it even more.
Yeah, I would say so. And it's probably, of all of Nolan's movies, there's less twists and turns, and therefore I feel like it is the most rewatchable. Like there's only so many times I can watch The Prestige and get the same ooh, I did the first time, you know? But with this movie, I feel like if you have a good sound system and a good screen to watch it on, and you can watch it loud enough and big enough, it won't be as good as the theater, but it's definitely a movie that is rewatchable. And it's not super heavy and depressing. It's more of like the optimistic outlook of wars, I guess, which might sound weird, but it's not caught up on the death and terribleness. It's caught up on like the hope and like the heroism of surviving, and spoilers for Dunkirk in real life, but like even civilians step into this fight to try and save their military and to save their young men who are out there dying. Man, there's just something about that is genuinely moving.
It is. I agree. I 100% agree with everything you said. I was going to say something similar if you didn't, but you've said it.
Yeah, it fills you with like that swell of pride in the right places and that fear and dread in other places. And yeah, so Dunkirk is probably my favorite Christopher Nolan movie. I know that's sacrilege because I know a lot of people like Following, and most everyday movie watchers probably like The Dark Knight.
Yeah, I think if there is a contender against Dunkirk for me, it is probably The Dark Knight.
Sure.
And then I think everything else is at least one tier below, if not more. Those two.
I think those are the two movies, at least so far, that he's going to be remembered for. Maybe Inception, but maybe not.
Yeah. Inception. I was about to talk about Inception, but let's not get too much into Inception. So we can move on. I think
we could do an episode on Christopher Nolan one day.
One day. All right. Well, let's go into the last of the three movies we're discussing today, The Shape of Water.
When you look at this, look, some of the best minds in the country peeing all over the floor in this here facility. There's pee freckles on the ceiling now. How'd they get it up there? Just how big a target do they need, you figure? And get enough practice, that's for sure. My Brewster, no one's ever called him a great mind, but even he manages to hit the can 7% of the time. Excuse us, sir.
No. That's all right. Go ahead. You ladies seem to be chatting enjoyably. Girl talk, no doubt. Don't mind me.
Okay, so Shape of Water, directed by Guillermo del Toro, whose name I always struggle to say. I don't know why. It's just really hard to pronounce.
It's just Del Toro, man.
I know, but it's the Guillermo.
Yeah. Well,
I almost go Guillermo every time. Even
Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, even though I know it's Guillermo, it's just a sound I don't often make with my mouth, so it just feels funny.
Yeah. It's like for a long time, it took me forever to adjust to saying Cillian Murphy instead of Cillian Murphy.
Right.
I still don't like it.
Shape of Water. It is set in the 1950s. It's about a woman who is mute, who works in, I guess it's like a kind of a government research facility, and they bring in this creature who lives in the water. It's kind of it's like a human like fish sort of combo, and she develops a relationship with it, and I think that's
that's the long and short of it.
That's it. Yeah. What did you think of this movie, Mike?
Well, I think if you've been listening to the rest of the episode, you've probably parsed out that I do like this movie quite a bit. This is probably my favorite Guillermo del Toro movie. Now you've got me.
I'm sorry, I made you think about it. That's my problem, is I can't not think about it.
Well, it's my favorite movie of his in quite some time. I think I like it definitely better than any of the Hellboy movies. This fits right in there with Devil's Backbone and Pan's Labyrinth as far as his stronger movies, in my opinion. I think he has the right sense of just romantic vision. And I don't mean that literal romance, but more like he's a romantic, right? He's a very much like a heart on his sleeve kind of guy. You can tell that in his movies, I think, especially this one. This movie it's a fairy tale, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's a fairy tale for grown-ups. It's like it's got violence and sex and everything that adults like in their movies, but it almost feels like a children's book, if that makes sense. I don't know. Does that make sense to you at all?
Yeah, and I think that's the same territory that he was in, for Pan's Labyrinth. It's an adult fairy tale. I think this one is a little less fairy tale-ish and maybe a little bit of like sort of a spy movie, or at least I just got that feel, because there is some like, it's the American government doing this top secret mission, or this top secret project, I guess. And so I just had this like sort of spy vibe to me in certain places. That was very fun, I think, and I think you're right that he romanticizes, or he's romantic, and the movie's very romanticized. Like, it's a very romanticized version of the 50s to me. Like, I think like all of the little details that from the clothes to like, I don't know why this stuck out to me, but like in the beginning of the film, she's boiling eggs in a clear pot, so we can like see the water boil. But it's like and like those little details and the way that they're shot, it just feels like a very idealized, romanticized version of the 1950s. There's a lot of love for that time, I think. Certainly,
you can tell, like, with just the set design and the music and the cinematography, it just feels like a painting. If you were like looking at like Norman Rockwell paintings and things like that, of like, it's trying to evoke a lot of that imagery and a lot of those, like that Americana in its heyday kind of thing. I don't know if I'm describing that correctly, but
I I think you are.
Okay. One of the things that I think stood out with this movie for me is, of course, Richard Jenkins. That guy is, in my opinion, I don't want to say the heart and soul of this movie, because Sally Hawkins is that, undoubtedly. But whatever the next most important thing besides heart and soul is, right? Richard Jenkins is that.
Lungs and
lungs and
spinal cord.
There you go. he is that. He oh man, he is so good. He's so vulnerable. He's never afraid to like not look good. He's never afraid to like just be vulnerable. I can't think of a better person cast in like her friend, like the side character role. I almost wish he could just be in less supporting roles and more lead actor roles. But that's neither here nor there.
I think the movie I can think of, I think he might have been nominated for a lead actor. Do you remember that movie, The Visitor?
He was, and I do.
Yeah, and he was really good in that. The first thing that comes to mind when I think of Richard Jenkins in a lead role.
I agree.
But yeah, he's really good into this. To me, he was kind of my connection to this film. Like, all came through Richard Jenkins, and I don't know if that's like being a male and he's a male, and there's some sort of disconnect with like myself and Sally Hawkins, and I think Sally Hawkins is really good, and I like her in everything, and she's really good in this, and does a lot. But as far as like a real like deep connection, I got all of that through Richard Jenkins.
I think that's what his character is there for. I also, on contrary to that, I find Michael Shannon's performance in this movie, and let me start by saying that huge Michael Shannon fan, great actor, really phenomenal actor. I think in this movie he may have been a little cartoonish.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
And I think that is probably my least favorite part of the movie, which is a shame, because I don't think I've ever said that of Michael Shannon in anything. And
I might have said it about Man of Steel.
Maybe. I don't remember if he was my least favorite part of Man of Steel, but
I don't know either. I just think I remember not liking him very much, or like his character. But this is not Man of Steel review, so I apologize.
Yeah. Anyways, no, but with like the fingers and everything, and I'll be vague, but something that happens with some fingers in Michael Shannon's character that almost just seems on the nose cartoonish. And I don't think it necessarily is a detriment to the movie. Like, I'm not going to say that The Shape of Water is not good because of that performance, but I think, if he was reeled in a little more, I think he could have been put to better use.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is a little bit cartoonish, a little bit like almost like mustache twirling villain. To an extent, and I think what that might come from for me is that like I don't necessarily understand where he's coming from like a human level, right?
Right.
Like, when you have a bad guy, like your bad guy needs to want something, for a good reason,
right?
I guess. I'm talking about this really poorly, so I try to think of like the better way to word it. But like, your villain and your hero are kind of like the same thing. They both have their own desires, and like if the movie was about the villain, like whatever it is that he wants, I think it should generally be something like understandable, right, that we could like connect with, and I don't think he has that, and I think that's what makes him very cartoonish, is because he feels just kind of like he's just a bad dude, like, and I have no understanding of why he is that way and like what he wants out of it. And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, maybe I missed something.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, we're being vague with spoilers here. There is one scene where he becomes a little misogynistic and creepy, and I understand what he wants in that scene, from like a chauvinist, sexist male point of view.
Mm-hmm.
But like his overarching, like him being the antagonist of the movie, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say that he's the antagonist to Sally Hawkins and the Fishman.
Yeah.
I don't.
That's apparent in the trailer.
Yeah. So I don't understand exactly why he's so passionate about that.
Yeah.
You know,
Every antagonist is their own story's protagonist.
Right.
And
yeah.
I think that's a better way of saying what I was trying to say earlier.
There you go.
It's just there's nothing quite keeping him from being like just one note, I think.
Right, and maybe that just comes from the fact that he just didn't have the same screen time as these other characters. But he's not bad by any stretch of the word. It's just it feels like maybe he's in a different movie than everyone else when he's on screen.
Yeah.
And not even a bad movie, just a different one.
Yeah, for sure. Outside of that, I mean, I enjoyed the movie. I really liked it. I think like it's a technical masterpiece.
Oh,
from like costuming, special effects, cinematography, as you said, was really on point and very painterly. Very much like you could hang any frame from this film on your wall and call it art, sort of thing. And contrary to what I was saying about Call Me by Your Name, like this is cinematography that calls attention to itself. It says, "Look at me."
Right, definitely.
I am great cinematography, obviously.
I am cinematography incarnate.
Yeah, and which I think totally works for this movie. You know, everything else without Michael Shannon in it, there's you know, like so much. It's just kind of pleasant outside of that. Like despite there being certain things that, you know, there are obviously like problems and stuff, but like Sally Hawkins is so just likable to look at. You know, and like her and Richard Jenkins' relationship, and you know, there's always something playing on the TV in Richard Jenkins' apartment. It's kind of like either like an old musical or some old like TV show, and the characters seem to be. It's one of the movies where the characters seem to be like aware of how great what's going on around them is. You know what I mean? Like you have a movie like Midnight in Paris where the characters just look back like 20 years in the past, or, you know, or I guess more than that for like Owen Wilson in that movie, but he's looking back at like the 1940s or 20s, 1920s. And he's just like, that was the best time in the world. Right. And like these characters in the 1950s, like seem to really appreciate what's going on around them and like really love the 1950s. And love like the musicals and stuff, and I just really like that. Like there's so much pleasantness about the movie that just it definitely like it puts me in a good mood to watch it.
There's one scene in this movie between Sally Hawkins and Richard Jenkins where they're on a couch and like they do like this little dance to what they're watching, but like while sitting on the couch, and like they just kind of move like their knees and their feet like in sync. And it's just delightful. Like little scenes like that, it's like it does so much to like show you their friendship. It gives you like a shorthand for just how they are, who these people are, what they like, what they bond over. It's really great. One thing I think that it's not even a bad thing for the movie, but when I was watching it the first time, I thought about it in terms of like, oh, this is the script doing this to make me feel this way later, right? And it felt like there's some things in the beginning of this movie feel like obvious setup so that you will buy stuff later on. A lot of that, like her getting ready ritual, this is in the very beginning of the movie, so it's not anything big, but like there's a scene where I think she's even masturbating in the tub really quickly.
Yeah, that happens a couple of times.
Right, so it's like, okay, you know, she can get off in the water. Her friends are the downtrodden in the 50s, right? Like it takes place in the 50s when it was a less accepting time of minorities of all kinds, and all her friends would fit that criteria, right? So her friends are automatically in a position to understand where she's going to be going on her journey, and they'll be able to support her in a non-judgmental way. And so like I felt like at the beginning of the movie, I could see the script lining these things up and setting up the pieces for the inevitable plot of the movie, right? It felt very plot driven at the beginning, if that makes sense. Like every scene, I was like, okay, well, this is why this is here, and that's not a bad thing because every script, I guess, needs to have like it needs to be tight, and every scene needs to have importance, you know. But it felt like I was like, oh, okay, this is why it takes place in the 50s, and this is why her friends are all in a position to be downtrodden so that they can therefore understand her with less judgment later.
Yeah, I think the script does shine through a lot of like the plotting of it, and it's very much like the I guess script technique or form of like here's a regular day in the life of this character before anything changes, and
right.
Like I will show you all of the pieces that are going to be relevant later. Right.
Exactly.
And then we get like a normal day in the life, and then the next day something happens, and all of that changes. Right. It's like very
right.
classic script structure.
Right.
And that it does kind of shine, and is very obvious if you know about those sort of things and.
Right. I guess if you've seen a lot of movies, it you can just see the moviness working of it all. And like I said, that's not a bad thing. But I do remember being taken out of it a couple times at the beginning because there was things when I was watching it where I was like, this is obviously in here for this reason. And when I'm 20 minutes into a movie, I don't want to be thinking about the payoff at the end of the movie. So I think maybe the script could be a little more subtle in some of the obvious stuff, especially in the first act, but man, that's a pretty minor gripe.
Yeah, I agree, and I think with that, it's like, personally, I don't know. I don't know if it's spoilery, and if it is, we can not go into this. But like I didn't necessarily find myself surprised by anything that happened in the film.
No,
and I think, as you said, like the script isn't subtle, and like when it sets certain things up, like it feels like a setup, and I don't think that's going to be a problem for the average movie watcher.
No, definitely not. I don't think.
And I think it's fine, and I don't know how big of a problem it is because I still enjoyed the movie because there is just so many things about it that are just a joy to watch. Right,
sure.
Like there's so many like the performances and relationships and there's just really like magical moments in the film.
The score was even pretty, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, so a lot of it just works on just like I just can just enjoy this movie. Like I can almost just like turn my brain off for this film,
right.
and really enjoy it. Which is something for like a Best Picture nominee. That's not often the case.
No, definitely. And I would say I think one of the strengths of this movie is probably the special effects. The actual fish man himself. He looked so good. Like, he looks like a cooler version of that other fish monster in Hellboy. I don't know if any of you have listening to this movie have seen the Hellboy movies that he did. But the guy, he's like his buddy, his little fish buddy. The fish monster in this one reminds me, I don't want to call him a monster. The fish man reminds me a lot of that. And I don't know, it's interesting the way he's put together. He's interesting to watch. He looks good. I believe that this is like a real thing. Like there's not much backstory in the movie, but I think at one point they mentioned like they just found it in South America somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's really cool. I would like to see, like, I like how in this movie they don't give you much backstory, but they give you enough to where like you could fill out this whole creature's existence almost, and you could kind of see how like he could live in South America and all those like rivers and in the jungles and stuff, and you could see how tribes would worship such a thing. There's a couple references in this movie where people wonder what this thing is and where it came from, and you never really learn a whole lot, but what you do learn is just so cool.
Yeah, it gives you more to think about it. Like, it gives you a movie to make in your own head. You know,
right? The adventure of how this fish man got from where he was to here.
Yeah,
you know.
And I think maybe in some other film, like a more, I almost said mainstream, but I guess like a more blockbuster like type film, we would have like the cold open of the movie would be them capturing this thing, right? And we'd get like this big action sequence,
like
and
a Jurassic Park type intro, like
right?
Shoot her.
yeah, exactly. And we don't get that, and I think that's, because that's could almost be, its own movie. And I like a film that knows like what information we need and what information is more fun to like let play out in our heads.
Exactly. Don't fill out too much backstory. I almost feel like people these days with movies expect too much explained to them. And I kind of like it when movies give you less and expect you to do some of the heavy lifting.
Yes.
And I think this movie does that very well, actually, because it presents you this really cool like fish monster design. And I don't know, I just like, I could watch a whole movie about that where that thing was like hunting people, because it's just such a cool looking design. And you get even the romance, right? Like you understand why like someone could even maybe be attracted to this fish thing, right? Like it's just designed so carefully and put together so well. The skin looks good. His fingers look good. Like just everything about that thing I think looks really great.
Yeah, it could easily be silly, or like look,
right.
It's a weird line. It's a weird line that you have to walk, and I think they walked on it perfectly with the creature design.
Yeah, it could be silly, and before I saw the movie, I thought it was going to be. I when I knew the plot and I'd been hearing about it for a while, I was just like, well, that doesn't sound like it's for me. But I ended up enjoying it way more than I ever thought I would.
Yeah, I think. I guess real quick, I just want to ask, like, do you think that there will be people out there that no matter what are going to just go, man, isn't that weird that she likes that fish creature? Like, that's icky and gross and I don't understand it. And they're just never going to be on board with like that part of the film.
Sure, probably. But I also think those people probably won't see it.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think most people who see this movie know the basic plot. I hope, all right? I mean, like, the poster's pretty obvious, yeah. Right? Which I think the poster is great, by the way. I love like the drawing poster of like her embracing the fish man. Mm-hmm. It's such a cool poster.
It is. It's great.
But no, I don't think anyone who's going to see this movie. I mean, they might.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I just hope that it doesn't become like the legacy of the movie. You know what I mean? Like a
punchline.
Yeah. That like, oh, she's into this thing and develops like a relationship with it, and I just don't want that to be
right.
Like,
you don't want like some reductive like, oh, that's like the lady in like the fish love story movie or something like that. Like you want it to be given its due respect because it's told in such a way to where it's not ridiculous and it's actually pretty beautiful in its own little way, right? So it's not, a movie can have any kind of plot as long as it handles it in a satisfying and well put together way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think this movie does that. So I think if anyone gives it a shot, I think they'll see the artistry and the romanticism behind it. I just think that like you can't go in there with like the cynical attitude of expecting a modern day legitimate love story. You have to go in that romantic in you as well. You have to go in there and expect to see a fairy tale.
Yeah, and maybe this is way off base, but it reminds me a bit of like Magic Mike when that came out, when you have like this group of guys that were like, why would I as a male ever want to see Magic Mike, because it's so clearly for like females.
Oh, right.
And just going to be about like handsome muscular dudes
C. Tates and McConaughey oiling each other up playing volleyball.
Yeah, but there's so much more to the film than that, and it's I don't want this to turn in. I don't know if it will, but that's just I don't know, just something I thought I'd ask about, because I think it has the potential to do that. But like, as you said, if you actually watch the film, I guess much like if you actually watch Magic Mike, you realize there's so much more. It's not just a film about lady and a fish being in love.
No. I mean, it is that, but it's a beautiful. I don't know. It's just beautifully made.
Yeah, and yeah. So I guess overall thoughts. I really enjoyed it. I would be lying if I said I was really moved by it. Like, it was more of a film that I just enjoyed. Like, it didn't really hit me on too much of an emotional level. Like, I watched it with my girlfriend Nicole, and she and a few times throughout the movie got a little choked up, a little teary eyed, and I never had that. Not even close to getting like watery eyes. Like, it's good. It just didn't. I didn't have that connection with it.
No, I would agree with that. I enjoyed it the whole time. I wasn't really moved by this movie. I think of all the movies we've talked about today, I would say Dunkirk moved me the most. I would also say that Call Me By Your Name had the best scene of any of these three movies, and that scene with Michael Stobar. Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, Call Me By Your Name honestly moved me the most, and out of these three, it is the one that I liked the best, and I guess like, and maybe it's unfair because I did watch Dunkirk twice, but it's the movie that I would want to watch again out of these three. Like, that's a movie I would want to watch again first.
Yeah, I can see that. I probably. I do want to watch both Call Me By Your Name and Shape of Water again, so I can't really make that call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, and I guess I'm not sure that I will watch Shape of Water again. Maybe, 10 years in the future.
Yeah, down the line,
like
for sure.
But it's not something I'm going to want to revisit. Like, if I'm with someone who hasn't seen, Dunkirk or Shape of Water, I'm going to kind of like try to convince them to not watch Shape of Water, because I'm not necessarily going to want to watch it again. Not for at least for like probably a few years. Like, I would much more like, let's watch Dunkirk. If you haven't seen that, you got to watch Dunkirk.
I feel like Shape of Water and Dunkirk would be the movies that are probably easier to get people to watch. Call Me By Your Name would be the one that you would have to champion.
Yeah.
More often.
Yeah, if I was with someone who I thought would appreciate Call Me By Your Name, I would definitely try to convince them to watch that first out of any of these three. But
sure, if you're with your parents, watch Dunkirk.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm thinking of too, because it seems like the situation I always find myself in, where I'm having to decide what movie to watch. It always ends up being like with my dad.
Yeah, and
like that sort of thing.
Yeah, and then like if you're a movie buff and you like movies that sometimes have, for lack of a better word, more artistic plots, sometimes you have to pick and choose who you show your favorite movies to. Not everyone's always as receptive to certain artsier movies.
Yeah.
So I think Shape of Water is a good one to have in your back pocket for that reason.
Yeah, fair enough. I think so too. I think most people, as long as they don't get like too weirded out by fish human love story, I think everyone will really enjoy it.
Yeah, that seems probably the most accessible one, besides maybe Dunkirk.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that does it for the movie discussions for this week's episode. So, last but not least, we will do our top three. And since we're covering the Best Picture nominees for the next couple weeks, we thought we'd go ahead and stick with that theme for the top three, and we're going to do our top three Best Picture winners. So out of all the films that have won Best Picture throughout time, which I think is something like 70 films, 80 films? I don't remember how far we are in to the Oscars.
I don't
now.
either.
I think it might be like, we're going to be like the 85th or 89th or something. I don't know.
That sounds right. Sure.
There's a lot.
There were. This is probably the hardest top three we've had to do so far. For me.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, fair enough.
There were a lot of good movies.
Yeah, narrowing down to three is pretty hard. And on that note, I'm going to make you go first.
Oh, okay. All right. So I know you usually don't like to put these in any kind of order. I'm going to go ahead and go with least good to most good. All right.
Okay.
I'm going to start out with 2007's No Country for Old Men. This is obviously by the Coen brothers, starring Josh Brolin and Javier Bardem and Tommy Lee Jones. This movie is so good, I'm pretty sure I don't need to go into details. Yeah, man, it's just got some of the best, most intense, terrifying scenes. Like the classic scene of Anton Chigurh taking the the air gun in his little tank that he comes around, and that very first scene where he like stabs or like shoots that air gun into that cop's head, pulls him over, and you're just like, man, what the hell? His crazy haircut and his crazy like scary face, and man, it's just a great movie.
Yeah, it's certainly for me like the Coen brothers like masterpiece.
Yeah, peak Coen brothers.
They have yet to top and didn't do any better before that one. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
Hang on, though. I feel like you're underselling the Coen brothers. Just because this is the best Coen brothers does not mean that other Coen brothers did not come close to being great movies.
No, yeah,
they have plenty of fantastic movies. This just being the best amongst them.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry,
I agree.
Had to step up for the Coens real quick.
Yeah, they have several other movies that are almost as good as
No
Country for Old Men.
Thank you. Now we can move on.
Okay. All right. So my first one will be. Let me find the year because I actually didn't write down the year, and you've made me realize that I should have.
I only knew the year for No Country because I have to look up my other 2 years.
Oh well, you set the precedent. Now we have to.
I know.
We have to go with the year to look smart or sound smart because we won't look smart.
All right. Well, you keep going. I'll have my years ready.
Okay. My first one is going to be. I don't know that I can do an order because these are all so good. So I'm not doing one.
I know. The order is very splitting hairs.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm going to go with the Best Picture from 1934. Which do you want to guess what that is? Or do you know what that is off the top of your head?
1934?
Yeah.
Give me a minute. I promise I'm not looking
it up. You can't look it up.
I'm not looking it up because I'm probably going to get it wrong, so you'll know I didn't look it up.
Okay.
Is it Best Years of Our Lives?
No. No. It happened one night.
Ah, damn it.
Which I didn't know that had won Best Picture until I started looking up.
I knew it won Best
list.
Picture, but I didn't remember the year. That's the movie that made undershirt sales plummet, correct?
Yes, because Clark Gable, who stars in the film, took off his shirt in a scene, and he had no undershirt on.
And all the other men thought to themselves, "Hey, what's this
Clark Gable doesn't wear an undershirt
like shirt I've been wearing all this time? It's making me hot for no reason. Let's just get rid of it." Clark Gable looks cool. He's getting cool ladies.
Yeah, but it's a screwball comedy. It's basically like the wrong man's been accused of a crime and has to go on the run, and he meets a woman and he falls in love. It's very funny. He meet cutes a woman, and it's great. It's actually on Criterion Collection recently. Yeah, it's a classic screwball comedy that's just a ton of fun. Really, just kind of sweet and cute, and like a perfect movie. Like if you're hanging out with a girl, like that you're just starting to date or whatever. Like it's one you can throw on if you're like a film buff who's into like classic film, but you want to find a film that they'll like. I think it's really fun and cute and a little nice date movie.
Yeah, definitely. Who directed that?
Well, let's look up real quick. Frank Capra. I should have known that. Yeah, Frank Capra.
Didn't he do Arsenic and Old Lace as well?
I believe he did, and of course It's a Wonderful Life.
And many other movies.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's a good pick. My second pick is 1962's Lawrence of Arabia.
Ooh.
With Peter O'Toole and Alec Guinness. Directed by David Lean. Man, this movie doesn't really need me to talk about it a whole lot, but I think just really quickly, it is gorgeous. One of the best looking movies ever made.
Yes.
One of the most epic movies ever made. One of the most interesting performances by Peter O'Toole in a movie. I don't know, man. He is just not like your average protagonist of a movie. I don't know, man. He's just got those piercing blue eyes, and he's just so soft-spoken the whole time. And I don't know. It's just a unique, bizarre movie that to this day I find it impressive that it even exists.
Right?
It just seems just too epic to be made and too expensive.
They shot so much like in the desert, and it just seems like the worst place in the world to shoot a movie.
Yeah.
And just like, how do they survive and even like come away with something good out of that environment?
Yeah, it's just technically amazing and beautiful, and I'm really jealous because I know you have actually seen this on a 70 millimeter print in a movie theater.
That's right. I was going to tell that story, but it's,
Stole your glory.
That's right. Yeah, so I was visiting my dad in Washington D.C., and there's an AFI theater there, and they just so happened the week that I was there to be screening like a brand new restored print, 70 millimeter print of Lawrence of Arabia, and I convinced my dad and his girlfriend at the time to go see it with me. And I just assumed that they knew what Lawrence of Arabia was.
Sure.
But it turns out they did not. Yeah, because I think I texted you and I was like, guess what? I'm going to go see Lawrence of Arabia in 70 millimeter. And so you knew, but they did not. And so on the way to see the movie, which started at like 7 p.m.
Jesus.
On the way, they were like, yeah, we'll see this movie and then we'll just go get dinner afterwards. There's this place that's really cool. And they're like, what time do you think the movie's going to be over? And I was like, I don't know, probably like 11:30. It's like 4 hours long. And they were very surprised. And I don't think too thrilled.
They were like, oh.
That and
Great.
I guess they could have backed out, but we were already on like the metro station on the way to the theater, and they found out, and they had to sit through a 4-hour movie without any like much forewarning.
Did they like
think
it?
That's funny. They did. I think they both served in the military and spent a lot of time in the desert recently.
Okay.
Or like shortly before the movie, and so I think they were both not as impressed by the beauty of that movie and the desert and all the sand. But I think they ultimately they did enjoy it. They didn't complain too much, and I don't know that they'd ever watch it again, but I certainly would, and I really enjoyed it. And I think that was an amazing way to see the film.
Yeah, I'm totally jealous of that experience, by the way.
Excellent.
All right,
I'm up. Next, I am going to go to, let me find the year real quick, 1969 to Midnight Cowboy.
Ooh.
Which is like very early in that like 1970s like independent cinema sort of movement.
Isn't it before the 1970s?
Yes, technically, but I think it's on the forefront because also
Right.
like
it helped start.
I think
movement.
The Graduate and like Bonnie and Clyde, which also helped like usher that stuff in,
Wild
was like
Bunch.
68, 69. Yeah, and so it kind of like started that movement that then like took over in the 70s. It was one of those early films. I'm blanking on the director's name, like John Schlesinger or something like that.
Yes,
but it's got Dustin Hoffman and John Voight in it, and John Voight plays like a cowboy who's coming to New York City because I think he just wants to live in the city, and I think he wants to like actually just like be a John, like a prostitute, is like his goal, right?
Yeah, basically.
To like come up and be like
a high class,
a high class cowboy John, and he befriends Dustin Hoffman, and just their friendship and like the whole journey that they go through, and like the ending of the movie just like rips my heart out. And makes me very emotional.
Absolutely.
And I just think it's the performances are really great. It's a very like I don't remember if I've actually seen this movie on a Blu-ray. I think I've only watched it on a DVD.
It's very ugly,
but I remember it being very like grainy and kind of ugly and not overly pretty. And I just really like the whole vibe and aesthetic. I think that really works for the movie. And it's really good. It's a really enjoyable movie. It's fun and funny and tragic.
And it has that classic Dustin Hoffman line, "Hey, I'm walking here."
That's right.
Yeah.
Which I learned recently was improvised.
Really?
He actually just like almost got hit by a car, and just was in character and was just like, "I'm walking here."
Yeah, that's funny. Have you seen that joke in Rick and Morty where they say like, "We got a word for that in Brooklyn. I'm walking here."
I've seen all of Rick and Morty, but I don't really remember that moment exactly.
It's funny, and it was a good reference to Midnight Cowboy. Yeah.
For sure. All right, so last one for you.
All right, so the last one for me. It's a toss-up, so I'm gonna have to pick one of them now, and I'll tell you what the other one was.
Sure.
I'm gonna go with the least obvious one, in my personal favorite between the two. So, Unforgiven.
Oh.
Yeah, Clint Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, Gene Hackman, And this movie came out in 1992. I believe it's the first Western to win Best Picture. Maybe the only one.
Yeah. Unless you count Dances with Wolves, which I don't think I would.
I don't.
I wouldn't really count that.
But anyway, Unforgiven, man, it's just about a man who, he's a father and he's a widower, and he basically agrees to help these prostitutes that are basically trying to get revenge on a man who cut one of them up. So they're offering some money that they've all stashed away to have justice brought to this man. And so Clint Eastwood and Morgan Freeman, who are getting up there in their years, decide to go out and try to help them. And the journey that Clint Eastwood's character goes on in that movie is just really moving to me. It's this whole time this man is just trying to be good and remember the memory of his wife and be the man that she always saw in him. But, sometimes the man you want to be and the man you are just don't always click together, And I think Unforgiven captures that perfectly.
Yeah. I have not seen it in over 10 years, and I've only seen it the one time. It was when I was first getting into film. I remember it being very good. It's a bit of like a tiger doesn't change its stripes type story.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just good.
Yeah, but I remember it being very good. I think it's one I definitely need to revisit because I remember very little about it, which is kind of cool. That makes for a good rewatch.
Right, yeah. Some of those movies, though, where it's been a while since you've seen them and you start thinking about them and you remember basically what they're about, it almost makes you want to see them more again, right? Because you're like, ooh, all that stuff might mean a lot more to me now than it did then,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But like Seventh Seal from last week's episode, the Criterion episode, I remembered what it was about, but once I watched it again, there was so much more to it.
Yeah.
I feel like Unforgiven would be similar.
I agree. Yeah. What about your number 3?
Last one, and definitely, I guess I didn't order the other ones, but this is probably my number 1, if I really got down to it. But it's from 1977, and it is Woody Allen's Annie Hall. Ooh. Which may be surprising. I guess there's other films that have won Best Picture, like Godfather and, I don't know, Forrest Gump. And
my other movie was Godfather, and I didn't put it because I thought, nope, Justin might put Godfather.
Yeah, I thought about it. It certainly it was on my short list because it's obviously amazing.
You can't not put it on your short list. It's The Godfather.
Yeah. And but I love comedies. Comedies is probably my favorite genre of film, as evident with my choice of It Happened One Night.
Mm-hmm. And that you say it frequently.
Yes, that might also be a clue if you were, being a really good detective.
Keen listeners to this podcast will know.
Yeah. So I just love Annie Hall. I think it's great. It's very inventive and unique for the time. It doesn't age at all. It's still it's works just as well watching it now as it did then. It's funny. It's genuinely laugh out loud funny to me. Some people find Woody Allen annoying. I think he's great in it. I think he can be a little much in some other films, but this film, he works for me. I love the opening of him. It's just the long shot of him telling a couple of jokes and then starting to tell the story, and it's just him against a blank background. That's a really interesting way to open a film, and it works. I love it.
Yeah, this is probably one of the stronger Woody Allen movies I've seen. He's made so many that I'm not even going to claim to have seen a significant portion of them. But I have seen a lot. I've seen maybe at least a dozen or two Woody Allen movies. And this is probably my favorite. Well, that's not true. Crimes and Misdemeanors is probably my favorite one. But Annie Hall is pretty top-notch. I think it's true that, Woody Allen is a person that doesn't click to everyone, especially the real person. But if you can get past the real person and just try to accept his on-screen persona, I think that Annie Hall is definitely holds up, like you said. It definitely it doesn't age poorly at all.
No, it doesn't even date itself with like I think the joke just gets funnier as time goes on, where there's a bit where like he's with a girl that he's not that into anymore, and she wants to have sex with him, but he distracts her by going on about the JFK assassination and all of the like how he doesn't understand how it could be one shooter, with like just going on about it, and like I get that was more relevant at the time, but like I think even that sort of joke that may seem timely, like the way it's done, it just gets funnier, I think, the more we get away from it, the actual like JFK assassination events and stuff, and the movie in general. Just every time I watch it, it's funnier to me. It's great. Like if you have not seen this film and you're listening and you're a fan of like, I think like if you're a fan of like Seinfeld or Curb Your Enthusiasm, it's very much like in that vein.
Oh, certainly.
Of humor.
Certainly.
It tickles the same funny bone as those things. So if you're fans of those and you haven't seen Annie Hall, I recommend it.
So does the Academy of 1977.
Very true. Good point. Okay. Well, that is it for this week's episode.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. And by the way, anyone listening, if you want us to go into more detail or more spoilery discussion of any of these movies, let us know.
Yeah, we'll gladly do it.
Yeah, so
we'll gladly jump in and dive into these deeper. It's a little bit different from our normal movie discussions. We don't mind doing spoilers, and we get to like really talk about these detailed stuff. So doing it, spoiler free and like kind of quicker reviews than normal was interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, but I also feel like there's so much great stuff in these movies that we haven't even got to scratch the surface of because, we don't want to spoil anyone, but we also want to make sure we get all the Best Picture nominees in before Oscars time. And so when you're doing 3 movies a podcast, you got to make some sacrifices. So,
we'd have like a 4-hour-long podcast, and I don't think anybody quite wants that.
Yeah, especially me.
Yeah, my voice would die.
Yeah, and editing would be not fun.
Cool. Well, as always, we want to thank you, the listener, for listening to the episode. We also want to thank Jake Wagner Russell for creating our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch. If you want to follow along with the podcast, see what we're reviewing next, talk to us about these reviews, like, did you disagree with us about what we think? Do you agree? We want to know. So you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/casuallycriterion podcast. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at casualcriterion. And if you want to email us directly, you can do so at casuallycriterion@gmail.com. All of those great ways that we stay in touch with to contact us about these things.
Yeah, so please reach out and let us know if there's anything you'd like to hear or you'd like us to change, or if you got anything, just let us know.
All right, well, I guess until next week, and I guess just real quick, next week's film is a Criterion episode. It's Spine number 12. This is Spinal Tap, which I'm excited to talk about.
And me too. So we will see you then. And all right. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye-bye.